कई बार कोर्ट में कुछ ऐसे बहुत रोमांचक किस्से पहुंच जाते हैं जो लगता ही नहीं कि केस है, किसी बॉलीवुड की कहानी की तरह लगते हैं। इस केस में भी वो सब था, मिस्ट्री, थ्रिलर, कंस्पिरेसी, जादू। और इसीलिए ये केस बना इस देश में हुए सारे केस लॉज में सबसे इंटरेस्टिंग केस। I'm Nivedita Raje, and today in the episode of Thursday Thriller, we are going to discuss the case of a princely imposter, also known as the Bhawal case. तो कहानी शुरू होती है भावाल राज एस्टेट से, जो ढाका डिस्ट्रिक्ट की सबसे बड़ी जमींदारी थी। In terms of territory, revenue and prestige, it was next only to the Dhaka Nawab estate of the Khwaja family. In fact, its enormous land holdings within Dhaka city began from today's Bangla Motor right up to Tejgaon and beyond. Most of the land to the north of the city fell under the Bhawal estate. इस मैसिव जमींदारी के जमींदार हुआ करते थे राजा बहादुर राजेंद्र नारायण रॉय चौधरी, जो 1901 में खत्म हो गए। उनके पीछे रह गई उनकी विधवा और 6 बच्चे, 3 daughters, Indumai, Jyotirmai and Taranmai, and 3 sons, Ranendra, Ramendra and Rabindra. In 1904, citing gross mismanagement, the Bhawal estate was taken over by the Court of Wards. अब इस मूव का बंगाल में बहुत बड़ा असर पड़ा। The nationalist quarters and the print media in Bengal raised a big hue and cry at the takeover of one of the most premier estates of East Bengal. इसे ब्रिटिश का एक ओवरटोन माना गया, जिसमें वो सिर्फ भवाल राज फैमिली को ही ह्यूमिलिएट नहीं कर रहे थे, बल्कि इंडियंस की डिग्निटी पर भी अटैक कर रहे थे। लेकिन भवाल राज फैमिली चुप नहीं बैठी। रानी बिलासमणि, द मदर ऑफ कुमार्स, सक्सेसफुली फाइल्ड अ लॉ सूट अगेंस्ट द कोर्ट ऑफ वार्ड्स, won the case in 1905, whereby the jurisdiction of the estate reverted back to the proprietorship of her sons, with the eldest Kumar Ranendra as the legal head of the family. जमींदारी वापस भवाल राज फैमिली के पास आ गई। बोर्ड ऑफ रेवेन्यू इस वर्डिक्ट से खुश नहीं था, लेकिन वो लोग चुप रहे। केस का वर्डिक्ट भवाल राज फैमिली के फेवर में आया। सक्सेसफुली उनके पास जमींदारी भी लौट आई, लेकिन इस फैमिली के सितारे गर्दिश में थे। एक के बाद एक परेशानी आने लगी। रानी बिलासमणि died in 1907. Her second son, Ramendra Narayan Roy, was entitled to 1/3 of this huge estate. In 1909, he went to Darjeeling to seek treatment for syphilis, but evidently he died there at the age of 25. Ramendra Narayan Roy was an heir to a huge zamindari, and his death was not an ordinary death. उसके बाद शुरू हुआ रूमर्स का, कंस्पिरेसी थ्योरीज का एक बहुत लंबा सिलसिला। There was a persistent rumor that although the Kumar's body had been taken to the cremation ground, it had not been cremated. In fact, कुछ लोगों का ये भी मानना था कि क्रीमेशन के बाद वो खड़े हुए और क्रीमेशन ग्राउंड से बाहर चले गए। और इस चीज़ को सब्सटैंशिएट करने वाले बहुत सारे लोग थे कि उन्होंने कुमार को डेथ के बाद जाते हुए देखा, चलते हुए देखा। द मैटर शुड हैव एंडेड एट रामेंद्र's डेथ, बट इट डिडंट। जैसे कि मैंने कहा, भवाल परिवार के सितारे गर्दिश में थे। नई कहानियाँ आने लगीं। Soon there arose an unsubstantiated charge of palace conspiracy and a dark family politics, which hinted कि कुमार की एक्चुअली डेथ नहीं हुई है। उनको मारने वाली उनकी ही पत्नी भीभावती थी, जिन्होंने अपने सीक्रेट पैरामार के साथ मिलके उनको जहर दे दिया। किसी तरह से कुमार ने अपने आप को बचा लिया और वो भाग गए। To make matters worse, the eldest Kumar died in 1910, probably because of his excessive drinking habits. 1913 में यंगेस्ट कुमार की भी डेथ हो गई और देखते ही देखते भवाल परिवार के सारे वारिस खत्म हो गए। All 3 Kumars had died childless. तीनों के ही कोई औलाद नहीं थी. The Bhaval Raj family was now bereft of any legitimate male heir to the zamindari. In 1915, the Court of Wards under the Board of Revenue went into action again and took over the management of the estate. Thus, the stage was set for a confrontation which would increasingly take on a fervently patriotic, nationalistic and anti-colonial overtone against the British Raj. लेकिन भवाल राज फैमिली भी चुप नहीं बैठी. The powerful factions among the family came together to reverse the situation in their own favor. In this, the youngest Rani Ananda Kumari Devi played a pivotal role. क्योंकि तीनों ही कुमार बिना औलाद के मर गए थे, रानी आनंदा देवी ने एक लड़के को अडॉप्ट कर लिया, राम नारायण रॉय, as the new Kumar of the Bhaval Raj family. Surprisingly, this move was endorsed by the British. बिकॉज उन्हें पता था कि अगर इसके खिलाफ वो बोल पड़े तो पेट्रियाटिज्म और नेशनलिज्म की जो लहर दौड़ पड़ी है उसे वो कर्ब नहीं कर पाएंगे. द गवर्नर ऑफ बंगाल ऑन हिज विजिट टू ढाका इन 1919 had himself anointed as the baby Kumar's eventual assumption to the Gaddi of Bhaval as the heir apparent and possibly later as the Raja of Bhaval family. This decision to endorse the adoption of the heir apparent was actually a step to nip in the bud the rising tide of Indian nationalism, especially the vocal Indian press. This Indian press had been vociferously denouncing the colonial government for injustices done to the beleaguered Bhaval Raj family amidst their personal tragedies. चीज़ें धीरे धीरे नॉर्मल होने लगी. इस अडॉप्शन को एक्सेप्ट करके ब्रिटिश ने इंडियन नेशनलिज्म की जो लहर आई थी उसे शांत कर दिया. भवाल राज फैमिली के पास फाइनली एक वारिस था और लोगों ने भी कहानियाँ बनाना बंद कर दिया. पर एक दिन सब कुछ बदल गया. एवरीथिंग ड्रामेटिकली चेंज्ड with the miraculous appearance of a strange sannyasi in 1921. This sannyasi appeared out of nowhere. He sat under a tree and started meditating. He meditated for months without speaking anything, and there was nothing unusual about this sannyasi except that he bore a striking resemblance to the second Kumar of Bhaval. जो भी उनके सामने आता था वो उनसे पूछता था क्या आप रामेंद्र हैं, और वो कुछ नहीं कहते थे. For months he refused to identify himself, और उनके साइलेंस की कुछ और ही इंटरप्रिटेशन निकली. पूरे बंगाल में ये बात फैल गई कि रामेंद्र कुमार भवाल लौट आए हैं. The news that the Kumar had returned reached the Bhaval family. Arrangements were made for him to meet the Kumar's family in Jodhpur. During his subsequent visit to Jodhpur Rajbari, the sannyasi was hugely welcomed and recognized by the tenant farmers as their second Kumar. हर कोई यही मानता था कि ये सन्यासी कोई ऑर्डिनरी सन्यासी नहीं है, ये सन्यासी के भेष में हमारे दूसरे कुमार हैं जो वापस आ गए हैं. Even before he was lawfully declared as the lost Kumar, लोगों ने मान लिया कि वही रामेंद्र कुमार हैं. इनफैक्ट रामेंद्र कुमार की जमींदारी पे काम करने वाले टेनेंट्स ने उस सन्यासी को रेंट देना शुरू कर दिया. His identity was supported by a powerful faction of the Bhaval Raj family. Thousands of tenant farmers, sympathetic public and the entire media. अब इतने रेंट और सपोर्ट के चलते सन्यासी के मन में कुछ आया और उसने कह दिया कि वही रामेंद्र कुमार है. और फिर कहानी बदल गई. He claimed that he was indeed the lost Kumar of Bhaval, who was poisoned by his own family, was saved by a group of Naga sadhus who had nursed him back to health. He said that he wandered all these years throughout the India with the sadhus, having lost his memory until his arrival in Dhaka. It seemed as if a Bollywood movie was going on. सन्यासी का कहना था कि उसकी मेमोरी उसके पास सालों तक नहीं थी, लेकिन ढका की ज़मीन पे पांव रखते ही सारी याददाश्त वापस आ गई. Through all this unfolding high drama, the widowed Rani Bhibavati, Kumar's wife, adamantly refused to meet the sannyasi. She wasn't ready to accept him as her husband. She said कि वो एक imposter है जो रेंट की वजह से लालच में आके अपने आप को रामेंद्र कुमार होने का दावा कर रहा है. In the meantime, the saga of the Bhaval sannyasi entered the mythical canals of Bengali folklore There used to be songs, dramas, novels, pamphlets, even in the remotest areas of the countryside, in praise and support of the rightful claim as the second Kumar of Bhaval, now returned from the dead through divine intervention. The sannyasi claimed the name and property of Ramendra Narayan Roy against his widow Rani Bhibhavati and other shareholders who were represented by the Court of Wards. On April 24, 1930, lawyers working for the sannyasi, supported by the sisters and elder sister-in-law of the Kumar, filed a declaratory lawsuit in the court of the first sub-judge of Dhaka district. The war of identity of the great Ramendra Narayan Roy began on November 30, 1933. दोनों ही साइड्स ने विटनेसेस को बुलाया और वो विटनेसेस बहुत बड़ी अमाउंट में थे, लिटरली हंड्रेड्स, और इनके स्टेटमेंट्स अक्सर कॉन्ट्रडिक्ट कर जाया करते थे. लेकिन जजमेंट आया 1936 में, जिसमें कोर्ट ने होल्ड किया कि ये सन्यासी रामेंद्र नारायण रॉय ही है. On October 5th, 1936, the government filed an appeal against the judgment of the lower court in the Calcutta High Court in the name of Court of Wards. The hearing began on August 14, 1939. On November 25, 1940, the Calcutta High Court upheld the verdict of the lower court and the appeal was dismissed. In 1943, the colonial government, along with Rani Bhibhavati, filed for a leave to appeal against the judgment of the Calcutta High Court in the Privy Council in London, seeking redress. But the war and the German bills in London delayed the hearing, which finally began in 1949. July 30, 1946 में प्रिवी काउंसिल का डिसीजन आया और प्रिवी काउंसिल ने भी ये मान लिया कि ये सन्यासी और कोई नहीं, रामेंद्र नारायण राव ही हैं. और फाइनली 1946 में उस सन्यासी की आइडेंटिटी स्टैब्लिश हो गई. जजमेंट के आते ही बंगाल में खुशियों की लहर दौड़ पड़ी. Everyone was celebrating, rejoicing the return of their second Kumar, who was not just the Kumar in their rumors, but was lawfully declared as the second Kumar of Bhaval. अपनी नई आइडेंटिटी और नई जिम्मेदारी के साथ ये सन्यासी दूसरे दिन काली मंदिर में पूजा करने गए. लेकिन वहाँ पे कुछ ऐसा हुआ जिस पे किसी को यकीन नहीं हुआ. उन्हें हार्ट अटैक आया और वो 2 ही दिन में ख़त्म हो गए. The Kumar died 2 days later. This judgment was a pre-independence judgment whose final verdict was delivered by the Privy Council. Privy Council's judgments also hold precedential value if they are establishing a significant legal position. However, this judgment is not considered to be a good precedent. Unlike other judgments which are derived through facts and evidences, this judgment was result of a popular opinion. उस सन्यासी को रामेंद्र कुमार इसलिए नहीं माना गया क्योंकि एविडेंसेस उसके फेवर में थे. उसे रामेंद्र कुमार इसीलिए माना गया क्योंकि लोग अपने जमींदार को जिंदा देखना चाहते थे. But there is so much more to this Bhaval court case than wild imagination and an even wilder claim. For one, it involved the production of a staggering amount of forensic evidence, which brought the questions of identification to the fore. Even today, it comes up in law schools in India as a reference for possible misidentification and the need for scientific data and evidence gathering methods. इस controversial identity case के चलते Indian evidence के rules को नए तरह से interpret किया गया. According to the Indian Evidence Act, a witness can only be examined on the knowledge of the facts and circumstances of the case. वो केस के फैक्ट्स एंड सर्कमस्टांसेस के बारे में क्या जानता है, बस यही एविडेंस के फॉर्म में एडमिसिबल है. उन फैक्ट्स और सर्कमस्टांसेस से रिलेटेड उसका क्या ओपिनियन है, ये इररिलेवेंट है और ये इंडियन एविडेंस एक्ट के अकॉर्डिंग एज एविडेंस एडमिसिबल नहीं है. Hence, it is accepted and established that opinions are irrelevant and not admissible as evidences according to the Indian Evidence Act. However, there is one possible exception, which is expert's opinion. The court cannot form a correct judgment without the help of a person with special skills or experience in a particular subject. When the court needs an opinion in a subject which requires special assistance, the court calls an expert, a specially skilled person. The opinion given by a third person is considered as relevant facts if the person testifying is an expert. Expert is defined under Section 45 of the Indian Evidence Act 1872. The court needs an expert to form an opinion upon foreign law, science and art, identity of handwriting, identity of finger impression, and electronic evidence. The evidentiary value of an expert's opinion is not considered to be a substantial one. His evidence is not a significant or a strong piece of evidence. This is because even if a person is an expert in his field, he cannot be termed as a direct witness and cannot give a statement on the facts of the case. He is just giving an opinion as per the evidences given to him and cannot draw a conclusion regarding the guilt of the accused in all cases. The infamous case also brings to the fore questions about evidentiary findings. What evidence is produced, what evidence is created to begin with, and what actually is evidence. As per the series of Supreme Court cases and the interpretation surrounding the Indian Evidence Act, an evidence is treated to be a strong piece of evidence if it conclusively establishes the facts of a case.